Know the difference with Annex Wealth Management? Keith Butler, wealth manager at Annex Wealth Management, joins us. Hey, Keith.
Hi, Danny.
Our relationship with clients goes farther than the investment and retirement planning. Life is a journey, and we realize every mile is important. We're in it with you for the length of that relationship. And that's just one of the ways when we say know the difference, that's what we mean. It's more than dollars and cents, and that's what we're going to talk about with Keith. It's important to not leave out a critical piece of the picture because successful retirement takes much more than adequate financial planning. Keith, in your opinion, what's the more part?
Yeah. It's interesting that we talk about planning all the time. That's our big thing here, and it really should be. Why do you do that? Why do you save? I mean, why do you spend your life deferring to a 401k plan? Why not just spend that money? The reason is you want to have something later for retirement. You want to plan for retirement. So a lot of times we focus on the hard stuff, meaning the financial end of it, the planning end of it. But there's also the soft stuff, right? There's also the soft part of what do you do in retirement? Will you be happy in retirement? Will you be fulfilled in retirement? And that's what we should talk about today.
I've heard many times people that are successful in retirement are retiring to something rather than from something. So
Right.
If your retirement plan really is just to be able to walk out the door and you haven't thought much about it beyond that, that can sometimes be an issue.
It can. And I think the big thing is to take a step back and figure, how do you define yourself? If you ask somebody, what are you? Some may define it in terms of their career. I'm a lawyer. I'm a banker. I'm a firefighter. Or maybe it's in terms of their family. I'm a father. I'm a mother. Or perhaps in religious terms. But there's something that you use to define yourself. And I think the answer to this might start with that.
I'm looking forward to this segment because I've got to be guilty. I'm kind of sort of on the doorstep, and I haven't really thought of what would be next. I think that's the fun part, but I haven't taken myself through the steps. How important is structure?
It is very, very important because you've lived most of your life. Ever since you were a little kid, you had structure, okay? Once you start going to school, okay, you have to get up in the morning, and now later on you go to work or class or what have you.
Even recess was scheduled.
Yes, it was. And gym class and lunch and all that kind of fun stuff. So getting a structure is something that is very important because we do find that people, once they do retire, if they haven't really thought about the soft stuff, there's higher incidence of depression, of anxiety, of things like that. And one of the key parts is to have a little structure to think ahead about your week on a weekly basis. What are you going to do with your time?
How about purpose? How important is to kind of lay in that purpose? You talked earlier about, kind of know yourself, but
Right.
You've got a purpose in retirement. You need to find it.
Yes, and I think that's what leads us to the answer is how you define yourself, is finding that, okay, some people just define themselves. I'll use lawyer because I was a lawyer, and I was acquainted with a guy, a well-known lawyer in town in his 70s. We had lunch a couple of years ago, and I said, how long are you going to work? He said, till the phone stops ringing. And I know that throughout my career, I saw that people that came back at very old ages, they couldn't give it up. They had to, if they were only coming to the office 2 or 3 hours a day, they were a lawyer. But see how you define yourself, and that may lead you to some sort of a purposeful retirement. Volunteering, you're a lawyer, fine. You don't need to work anymore. You got plenty of money. There's a lot of legal aid society out there. There's a lot of things you can do to help society or even work part-time. Because really the pressure of work is when you have to work. When you need it to support yourself. But once you get to a financial security in a retirement, you could get a part-time job just for something to do. It's fun.
Do you find that people need to determine their purpose, or the purpose going to find them?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I think you almost have to determine that. And I think you have to think it through in advance about what's important to you. Maybe it's animals. Some people just love animals. Well, there's so many places you can volunteer, work to help an animal cause, just for one example.
Sure. But also be flexible, too, because I think you're going to get to the point where maybe you're working at a humane society and you're like, okay, I can't do this all the time either. Right. So some flexibility would be important, right?
Yeah.
How about community?
Yeah, that's one of the last things here, because you don't want to be the kid with all the toys and nobody to play with, right? So finding other people that have similar interests to you, whether it's in a professional organization, maybe it's a religious organization, through volunteering, maybe it's sports. Maybe you're a fan of certain kind of sports. You're just big into football, something like that. Or fishing. There are lots of organizations, and one of the benefits of the internet is you can certainly find organizations to fit your interests.
Keith Butler is a wealth manager at Annex Wealth Management, talking about beyond the financial plan. We want you to have a well-constructed financial plan, but that goes by the wayside if there are factors that conspire to derail you. Any last takeaways?
Yeah. The summary is that it's something that should be thought about in advance. Again, it is the hard stuff, and I don't mean hard in a difficult sense, but the hard stuff is the finances, the financial plan, and those are the things that we're always focused on. I would encourage people, as you start getting close, within a couple of years, to start thinking ahead about what is it that really makes you happy, what gives you a certain sense of satisfaction, and where do you see yourself fitting in something where you can make a difference in retirement.